ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you for being so confident. Also are to do. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem. And if it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. Church in Jerusalem, we read in historical records, and the scriptures tell us as well, it was a place of great financial struggle, made up of predominantly converted Jews, so that as Paul looked out on several of these predominantly Gentile churches that he had planted, he saw an opportunity to care for this church in a way that would have undoubtedly gone a long way in putting unity and love on display for the watching world. The church in Corinth had already received her charge from the Apostle Paul to respond generously to this need, but a lot had happened since that original call to action. If you remember, if you were around for the early part of this series, a fallout had occurred between the Apostle Paul and many in the church in Corinth over the span of roughly a year, so that any thoughts of concern for those in Jerusalem were likely pushed to the peripheral edges of the minds of those brothers and sisters in Corinth, so that Paul reminds them, in light of his newfound confidence in them, going back to the end of chapter 7, of the Jerusalem church's need, inviting them to respond willingly and generously. Paul tells us, verse 2, that he even went so far as to brag on the church in Corinth to the saints in Macedonia, which led those Macedonian brothers and sisters to give out of their abundance of poverty, going back to the beginning of chapter 8, as they begged earnestly to participate in giving to the needs of the saints in Jerusalem. Imagine if those impoverished Macedonian brothers and sisters had accompanied Paul to Corinth, verse 4, only to find a community of more financially prosperous Christians, Peachtree City, unwilling to fulfill their promise. I mean, we're talking about humiliation both for the Apostle Paul and the church in Corinth, as well as a disrepute brought upon the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so Paul calls them to make good on what they said that they would do in giving to the need of the Jerusalem church. Not as an exaction, verse 5, not as a demand born out of some sort of easily accessible motivator of guilt or shame, as the church loves to do present day, but rather as a willing gift born out of the riches of God's grace in Jesus Christ. Again, that famous verse that we've gone to several times in the last couple weeks, 2 Corinthians 8:9. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you by his poverty might become rich. If you're a Christian, saved from wrath, declared righteous before God, cleansed from sin, freed from chains, reconciled to our Maker, forever blessed, children of the living God, heaven and heaven's King, our inheritance. And none of it, as Paul says elsewhere, is of our own doing, but rather God's doing. It's the gift of God. Ephesians 2:7, the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. If you're not a Christian, I said this several weeks back, you need to know, according to the scriptures, that you're forsaking the greatest riches in all of the universe, including the great treasure of the triune God himself. So that the first thing I would do this morning is to implore you, if you're not a Christian, to turn to Jesus, to put your faith, your trust in Jesus, who lived the sinless life of obedience that none of us could live, who died the criminal's death that we as sinners deserve to die, the one who took all of our debt upon himself so that we might be forgiven. I invite you to cry out to him as Savior this morning.